C1. You are listening at FameTV.info. A city bar late at night, in the early hours of the morning, when the bar was at its noisiest, it was as if all the commotion had just begun and there were men and women dancing on the dance floor. He chushu and narrowed her eyes and sized up everything. She casually leaned against the bar, took a sip of the bartender's freshly brewed wine, and her cheeks turned even redder, adding a charming feel. "Beautiful girl, are you interested in having a drink?" Suddenly, a duck's voice sounded by her side. She raised her eyes slightly and saw a fierce-looking man wearing designer clothes standing in front of her. The buttons on his shirt were about to burst from his protruding stomach, but he still thought that it was a very elegant smile as he looked at Hichushue. It was already the 10th person, but these people were really bored. With just his sportswear, would he be able to arouse their evil desires? Hichushue laughed lightly. She enchantingly embedded the hair that fell off her ears behind her ears, revealing her exquisite facial features. The white and rosy part made people drool. "Then drink this glass of wine first." She took the wine from the side and poured it into a cup. For some reason, a blue flame ignited around the cup, causing the people around her to look over in surprise. Hichushue burped, and her voice was a bit of a joke. She pointed at the wine cup and mockingly said, "Drink it. If you have the guts to drink, then I'll let you have the rest." The man was scared out of his wits when he saw the cup of wine that was still burning. He winced in embarrassment that he naturally knew how powerful this foreign wine was. Forget about the high price, once he mixed this wine, the quality of the wine would be extremely high. Not only could he not stand the taste of this wine, he was also afraid that someone would carry it away. Thinking of this, the man looked at Hichushue, gave her a thumbs up in anger, and left unwillingly. Seeing the man's leaving figure, Hichushue scoffed, yawned, and said with a sneer, "You have the guts to pick up a girl. It seems like all the men in this world do not have the guts." After saying that, she glanced at the eyes that were still on her body. She casually picked up her wine cup and prepared to drink it. Unexpectedly, a slender white hand was the first to extinguish the flames by the side of the cup. A deep voice sounded behind her, "There are many brave men. It's just that you haven't met them yet." When these words came out, a hint of clarity appeared in Hichushue's mind. She turned around and saw a man with an extremely charming appearance looking at her. He had a smile that was not a smile, and he directly drank the cup of wine. "Sai, you," Hichushue wanted to remind him, but she saw that he had already finished drinking, and his expression didn't change as he placed the wine cup on the counter. "Interested in a few drinks?" The depths of his eyes were bottomless, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and he gave off a mysterious aura that Hichushue was stunned. Then she smiled. This man in front of her gave her an indescribable feeling, giving her an inexplicable sense of familiarity. She glanced at the situation over at the box and saw that Xiaomui had not come out yet. She couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. She had followed Xiaomui here today, but he said that he had business to discuss and told her to wait outside. He had waited for almost 2 hours and could only sit here drinking while occasionally dealing with the men who came to chat with him, and this man in front of him. The corner of Hichushue's mouth slightly lifted. She immediately picked up a bottle of wine and poured 2 cups. She raised her eyebrows and said, "You have guts, I like it." And Haoshuan's heart stirred. A trace of light flashed past his eyes. He picked up one of the cups and lightly clinked it against the other, then leaned beside Hichushue. He was in great spirits as he smelled the faint fragrance on her body. The two of them continued to drink quite a bit. Hichushue's face became more and more red and her vision became blurry. She reached out to grab the wine again, but was stopped by a hand. "You drank too much, I'll send you home." And Haoshuan said in a low voice. As he looked at her flushed face, the smile on his face grew even wider. It seemed that she was still as confused as before. She was actually chatting and drinking with an unfamiliar man. Did she really think that everyone was a good person? No need. Hichushue covered her head and knocked Haoshuan's hand away. She burped and pulled out a smile. She then grabbed his jacket and stood up. I have a boyfriend. I'll call him. Let him take me back. After saying that, without waiting for Hauschwan to react, he took the bag and stumbled towards the direction of the restroom. When Hauschwan heard her words, his eyes turned cold. He didn't feel the least bit intoxicated. Instead, he leaned against the counter as he looked at Hichushue's back while deep in thought that at this moment, the restless woman at the side twisted her body and walked towards him. Before she could even open her mouth, she was frightened by his sharp gaze and didn't dare to go over. After a while, Hauschwan saw that Hichushua still hadn't returned. He felt a trace of unease in his heart. He frowned, hesitated for a moment, and then quickly walked toward the washroom. The bathroom became a lot quieter. He looked at the door of the ladies' room, and a trace of struggle flashed in his eyes. He pushed open the door and saw Hichushua leaning against the wall, mumbling something. Hauschwan let out a helpless sigh. He closed the door behind him and picked up Hichushua. "Good girl, I'll take you home." Hauschwan whispered into her ear, the corner of his mouth curving upwards that Hichushua raised her head to look at Hauschwan. Her eyes became a bit blurry. She felt as if her heart was burning and her mouth was dry. The ice cube beside her made her feel a lot more comfortable. So comfortable. She mumbled to herself as she covered her ice cube with her hands. Her whole face was close to it and her lips were constantly rubbing against it. Hauschwan's entire body went stiff. Looking at Hichushua, who was throwing herself into his arms, his heart trembled. The faint fragrance caused his eyes to waver. Unable to control himself, he grabbed onto Hichushua's waist and lowered his head to hold onto her fragrant lips. A trace of emotion rose in Hichushua's heart. Her body couldn't help but move closer to the ice. She softly snorted, wanting to ask for more, because her initiative had completely ignited Hauschwan's bottom line. He pressed her against the wall. His large hands continuously moved around her body, supporting her and causing her to pant heavily next to his ear. "Don't blame me, you started it yourself." Hauschwan's eyes darkened. He grabbed her by her waist, turned around, and walked out in large strides. Hichushua felt as if her entire body was about to explode. From time to time, there would be buzzing sounds by her ears, and she would feel a sense of unfamiliarity that made her feel a little flustered and uneasy. The night was charming and beautiful. The next morning, Hichushua felt as if her body was about to be torn apart and reassembled. She tiredly opened her eyes and saw a familiar yet unfamiliar face. She was scared to the point that her whole body trembled. Scenes flashed through her mind as her face turned pale. She bit her lower lip and tears rolled down her cheeks. She had actually rolled a bed sheet with a stranger she had just met, and this was her first time. She actually gave it to a stranger in such a hasty manner. She randomly picked up the clothes on the floor and put them on. Seeing the ambiguous marks on her body, her face suddenly flushed red. She clenched her teeth and glanced at Hauschwan, who was still sleeping soundly, then fled from the scene. Just as the door closed with a dong sound, the person on the bed hurriedly opened her eyes. Her brows were tightly knitted and her black eyes carried a deep meaning as the corner of her mouth curled into a bitter smile. It seemed that she was regretting it. However, he did not regret it. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.